Yep, okay. So this is called Sanskrit with Olson. I'm going to basically, we're going to talk about what Hinduism. I'm going to write out the words on here. You can follow along on your blank Sanskrit with Olson notes if you want. So because I can't write on the whiteboard, I'm just going to write how they're spelled on the Google Doc sheet or the word sheet here. And we got to get Josh to come in. All right, so it is Hinduism. And basically, Hindu is just simply an adjective meaning of India. Okay, it comes from the same root word as the word Indi. So India or Hindi, whether or not you just put an H in front of it. So to say Hinduism literally just means the religion of India. So you could talk, oh, what is your religion? Oh, I follow Germanism, whatever, the religion of Germany. Okay, so it's not, Hinduism is not a specific religion like Islam or Eastern Orthodox or Southern Baptist or something like that. It's kind of like Greek mythology. So you have this group of religions that are followed in India. There's much diversity. So for example, if you talk about, well, you know, what happened to Hercules in Greek mythology? Well, it depends on who you read, because some people say he did this, some people say he did that. Same with Hinduism. There's no one pope of Hinduism who tells you what's right and wrong. So what are the Indian scriptures, as it were? So the first one is you have the Vedas. And the Vedas are sort of the prime, the old works. Let me change this to make it a little easier to read. The most important of the Vedas is the Rig Veda. And there are 3 other Vedas as well. So these 4 books are huge. So, and in them is the Mahabharata. So the Mahabharata, Maha meaning great, again, and Bharata is a story. It is about 1.8 million words. The entire Bible has about 750,000 words in it. So if you consider the Old and New Testament, the Mahabharata itself, which is just one part of the Vedas, is over twice as big as the entire Bible. And this is just one story. So these are huge collections of stories, of writings, that sort of thing. And in addition to the Vedas, so I'll put this, are the Upanishads. And there are 108 of them. And it's like commentaries. It's things that people have written about. Oh, what does it mean? The Bhagavad Gita, what is this? What is the whole story behind it? So these are commentaries. When you talk about the Bible, or Yethik, Quran, Yethik, Torah, Yethik, very small things, the Upanishads and Vedas would fill a bookshelf. So it's not a small, compact thing like you would think of in other books. So we will get back to some of these stories as to how they affect the Hindu worldview, but first let's explain it a bit. So the Hindu worldview. So there is, at the very top, the Brahman. And the Brahman is that which is. It is the everything. So in Star Wars, it is called the force. But Brahman is not personal. It is simply everything that exists. So you are part of Brahman. My coffee mug is part of Brahman. The electronic thingies going out to show the video, they are all part of Brahman. And you yourself are Atman. So often this is translated soul. So over there in the corner, we have the Atman of Daniel. And in this lifetime, Daniel is a person, a human. So his Atman, however, in his next life might be something different. In his past lives, that Atman was also something different. But the Atman is the thing that is Daniel. At least at this moment, it's Daniel. You know, maybe it was a grub a few lifetimes ago. But that Atman travels through, it is part of the Brahman, but it is an individual. Then you have two related terms, karma and dharma. And your dharma is your duty, what you should do. It is the lifestyle you should have. Your karma is based on what, it is sort of how well you have fulfilled your dharma. Okay, so if you want to just make a short notation on that, dharma is your duty, karma is how well you have fulfilled this duty. And it is not in the sense of sort of your Western New Age ideas that karma is all the times you've helped a little old lady across the street, that is good karma and it gets chalked up. And every time you've gone and shot someone, that's bad karma and that counts against you. It's not this total of your good deeds versus your bad deeds. It is how well you have fulfilled your duty. And what is your duty is related to your caste. So where you are born, what position you are born into, and if you are born as a warrior, your dharma is to be a warrior. So let's just say, for example, we'll pick one that doesn't really exist. If you are born into a caste whose job it is to go around and kill little old ladies, and you help a little old lady across the street, that is not fulfilling your dharma. Because your caste should be out there killing little old ladies. So your dharma is specific to what caste you are born in. And we'll talk about what the 4 castes are, or the, yeah, depends how you define them. 5 castes later on. But this is best illustrated in a story from the Mahabharata. So we have this huge book. And in this story is something called the Bhagavad Gita. And the Bhagavad Gita is, for those who are actually in the classroom, I can show you how big it is. Unless someone has borrowed it. So the Bhagavad Gita is fairly small. Okay? It's basically a story of these people who were fighting each other. And in it, we have probably the most famous story in terms of what a Hindu should look like or how you should behave. It is the story of 2 guys named Arjuna and Krishna. Can't spell. So Arjuna was a prince. He belonged to this family, the Bhattacharya family, and in the course of all this sort of like dynastic feuding and such, he was going into battle. And he was facing across, and he realized, I have uncles and cousins on the other side. If I go into battle, I will have to fight my own family. And his chariot driver, little did he know, he was actually an avatar of the god Krishna. His chariot driver then began to counsel Arjuna as to what it is that, how he should behave in this situation. And basically, Krishna tells Arjuna that you are born in the warrior caste. Your job is to be a warrior. The people who are your enemies happen to be your uncle and your cousins. But to be a good warrior means to do your duty, to do your dharma to your caste, and therefore you need to go and fight against your uncle and cousins. In another situation, it would be bad for you to kill your uncle, but in this case, because you are a warrior, it is your duty. And so Arjuna then eventually accepts, yeah, I guess that's what I have to do, and he goes off and he fights in the battle. But the point of this is the fact that this then led sort of, if you have any such thing as a Hindu theology, the idea that it is how well you fulfill that duty that will determine what your karma is. Another famous book is called the Ramayana. And this is a story about a guy by the name of Rama. And guess what? He's also another avatar of Vishnu. And we'll talk about the main gods here in a moment. So Rama is an avatar of Vishnu, just like Arjuna's chariot driver was an avatar of Krishna. And Rama is this king, and he is in love with a lady by the name of Sita. And Sita gets captured, and Rama has to go and chase her. And this is one of the creation myths for Sri Lanka, for example, is that this turtle god was, the monkey god took Sita, and Krishna or Rama had to go and find her, and you ended up with the creation of Sri Lanka. That occurs in the Ramayana. It is another very big and very long part of the Hindu scriptures, a story about those two. All right, the gods of Hinduism, a new main category. I'm just sort of going through, throwing out these names and such. We will work with these a little bit and get you a little familiar with them. So, the gods. So Hinduism is what we call henotheistic. So is there one God? Are there many gods? Monotheism is where like Hinduism or like Christianity and Islam say, yes, there's one God. You could say paganism, like the Greeks, where you have many different gods. Hinduism is neither. You can't say there are many different gods because they are all part of Brahman. They are all part of the one. And so henotheistic means it's kind of like the sun and its rays. So there is one sun, but there are many different rays coming out of the sun. And so Brahman is one, but you have Ganesh and Vishnu and Krishna and all these different things coming off of that one, which are different manifestations of the one. So like the sun and its rays. So the four biggies that we will talk about. So Brahman is the force, the being, that which is what it is. A very similar word is Brahma. Brahma is the god that basically made things. So kind of started it and sort of stepped away. And then you have Shiva, who is the destroyer god. And you have Vishnu, which is the restorer god, sort of the yin and the yang, if you want to put it that way. And you cannot have one without the other. And so these are possibly the three main gods. You could even break it down to say these are the two main gods, and then each of them has what are called avatars. Make that small. Like, for example, Krishna is one of the most popular gods. He is an avatar of Vishnu. And it could go even more down. For example, Arjuna's chariot driver was an avatar of Krishna, who was an avatar of Vishnu, who is part of the Brahman, who you are also part of. Yes. So when we come to the circle of life. Very Elton Johnish. Okay, so everybody left. Bell rang. You're off. I'm going to finish this up so we can get to something else tomorrow. So we're talking about the circle of life. And concept of samsara. So this is thought of in, well, it is reincarnation. And in the West, you often think of reincarnation as this cool thing. Wow, you get to do reincarnation. I'll get to come back as something else. You know, what were you in a past life? Oh, I think it was Napoleon and I was Cleopatra. And well, no, in Hinduism and in Buddhism as well, which we'll get to later, reincarnation is considered a curse. This is something that you come into this life, you suffer through this life, and you're going to go and you're going to die in pain, and you're going to come back and do it again and do it again. And you will never escape this constant cycle of suffering and pain. And in this way, reincarnation isn't a blessing. It's not like, oh, cool, I get to come back and be a relatively wealthy middle-class person again next time. Oh, it's like, I'm going to come back and I'm going to go through a life of pain, and then I'm going to die and I'm going to come back and go through a life of pain. And so in Hinduism, the goal, if you have it, is something called moksha. Now, you might have heard of the concept of nirvana, or at least I hope you've heard of the band. And moksha is the Hindu version, and nirvana is the Buddhist version. In Buddhism, they liken it to blowing out a flame. You simply poof, you don't exist. In Hinduism, however, your Atman, which we talked about, is your soul, it's your personhood, it's the thing that gets reincarnated, is part of the Brahman. It's not a separate entity. So everything is interconnected. When you achieve moksha, when this Atman achieves moksha, when it has fulfilled its duty to every level that it can, and it escapes the cycle of reincarnation, the picture is of your Atman being a drop of water. And it has worked its way through how many innumerable cycles of life that after completing its dharma at every stage, when it was a grub, it was a very good grub. When it was a street sweeper, it was a very good street sweeper. When it was a priest, it was a very good priest. And now finally, it comes time for release. And it's like this drop of water gets dropped into the ocean. None of the atoms in that water cease to exist. However, that water, as that drop of water as a unit no longer exists in any concept. You can never bring that back. It is absorbed back into the Brahman. And this achieving the end of reincarnation doesn't mean the end of existence. It just means the end of existence as you know it. Now, when we talk about these different levels, these are the various castes. And there are basically 4. The highest is the Brahmin. Notice it's that similar word again. These are the priests. Under them are the Kshatriyas. And this could be roughly considered warriors. The knights maybe would be a different word. And then you have the Vaishya. These are the merchants. These are the upper middle class. These are your relatively well-off people. And then you have the Shudra. Did I spell that wrong? Nope, it just doesn't like the book. And the Shudra are your peasants, the working ones. And this is kind of built like a pyramid. The vast majority of people are Shudra. And then you have a few Vaishya, and then you have the Kshatriyas, and then you have the Brahmin. And this was the traditional way of organizing society in India, probably based off of the idea that the Aryans came in and took over what had been the previous darker skinned people and thought, yes, well, we're superior. And this developed into a caste system. And they've done genetic studies and they've said, no, it's not. There is no real correlation between having the lower caste be Dravidians and the upper class being the Indo-Europeans. But from a cultural point of view, this is probably how they got this idea. Now, there is a group which is even below the Shudra. They're not yet onto the caste, so they're sometimes called outcasts or the Dalit. And these are the untouchables. And how this works is that basically whichever one you are born into, they have their own dharma. So if you are a merchant, your dharma is to be the best merchant you can be, to treat your customers fairly, to buy your supplies locally, to get rid of plastic bags, whatever it may be. And if you are a really good Vaishya for a dozen lives or so, you will move up to a Kshatriya. However, if you're a bad one, you will move down to a Shudra. And so you have this sort of fluidity within the castes. And sometimes someone does something that is absolutely terrible. And if they do something in their life that is terrible, they will come back as an untouchable. And these people were considered to be, in some life, in their past life, I should say, they did something really, really bad. So they deserve to be punished in this life. And as a Western people, as the British coming in especially, they looked at this and said, well, that's terrible, but how can you discriminate against these people just because of how they're born? And to a Hindu, that makes perfect sense. Well, they're born there because in their previous life, they did something bad. So we'll punish them. That is their dharma, to be punished. And in that way, we'll be helping them to come back in the next life as something better. Now, the British, not necessarily believing in this whole different, you get another lifetime to try it, did some things to try to even out the caste system. And in modern India, castes are technically illegal, but they still exist under the surface very much in the awareness of the public. Now, in these castes, you have further subgroups called the Jat, or Jati is the plural. And so there are around 43,000 Jati. So for example, within the workers, there are, the silversmiths, the farmers, the butchers, the bakers, candlestick maker, all the different subgroups. And again, if you are a good candlestick maker, maybe you will come back in your next life as something better, like a baker. I have no idea which is better, which is worse. And this then means that if you are of a certain Jat, you should marry within your Jat. So this also had a lot to do with the whole idea of the arranged marriages, in that you had a very limited group to choose from, because you don't want to mess up things. If you are a Shudra and you marry a Vaishya, what's your kid going to be? That just messes with the whole cosmic system of life. So this basically sums up Hinduism. We will look at we'll do an activity where we kind of work with this and see how this plays out. And there's a couple other terms that you might have heard that I'd like to throw out for you, just to give you a little explanation. So one of them is bindi. And sometimes this is called kumkum, depending on which language you're speaking with. And this is basically a colored dot that the women would wear on the foreheads. Back in like the 90s, it became this sort of pop culture thing for Western people to wear this as jewelry, but it actually would signify whether or not a person is married. Kind of similar to the Bollenhütte that in the Black Forest. If you have a black dot, you are married. And if you had the black balls on your hat, you were married. If you had red balls on your hat, or if you had a red dot, you were unmarried. That's a very simplistic explanation, but it was just simply kind of like a Western wedding ring. And it's been adopted into Western culture as like, oh, this would be a cool bit of jewelry that I could wear. Now, Hinduism and Buddhism also have some Western flavors. Look, we have an American spell checker. So Western flavors, one of them, which you might have heard this word before, is yoga. Yoga simply means discipline, as in like a spiritual discipline. Let's put it over here. For example, you might talk about, in an evangelical context, that a daily quiet time is a discipline. This is something that you should get in the habit of doing. That daily prayer is a good discipline. This is something that you should say, yeah, this is something that I should do as a way of connecting myself with God, connecting myself with teachings, learning from other people. And yoga is a similar thing. It is a way of, they would use to then focus on the spirituality. And of course, in the West, people have taken it into just simply meaning really sort of contorted exercises. But there's definitely, the idea is that as you put your body in these positions, it helps you to focus your mind on the whole process, the Brahman, and the various ways that you are at one with the universe in the Hindu system. You might have heard of the Hare Krishna. This is a Western group. Krishna is, of course, we've mentioned him before, an avatar of Vishnu. And Krishna is a very popular god, and this was a westernized version of Hinduism that was very popular in the 70s, and they're still around today. And you'll often see them wearing orange robes and walking around and begging for alms, trying to gain their life or gain their dharma through doing things like this. The Beatles or George Harrison even sang a song to Krishna as a sort of a praise and worship thing called My Sweet Lord. So listen to the words of it, and it's actually a Hindu song. So they were a group that came along and became popular in the West around the same time that the Beatles did. Another thing is transcendental meditation. So I'm not sure if you guys are doing this in worldviews. I think that Mr. Cranes in the past has done it. So you might look forward to it, those of you who will be coming up to worldviews eventually. So transcendental meditation is another Western flavor of Hinduism. Okay. And then we have the New Age. This is kind of a coverall for any sort of religion or philosophy or worldview that is derived from this Hindu Buddhist worldview at its basic. However, these New Age religions are very much westernized. So, for example, we mentioned before that reincarnation in the West is not a curse because people in the West have pretty good lives, you got to admit it. And so they say, cool, I get to do this again. What will I come back as next life? They will often look in terms of tapping energies for healing or for personal enlightenment and that sort of thing. I think the best thing that I've seen from a New Age, I was in a New Age shop, I believe this was in Eugene, Oregon, which kind of says a bit as well. And they had all these sort of crystals and incense and stuff like that. And there was a handwritten card sort of taped to one of the shelves that said, shoplifting is bad karma. And that is so very much the Western interpretation, that karma is either, you know, pluses or minuses that go on your report card. And yeah, I thought about it later. I should have actually just stolen that card. It would have been cool to have. But no, I kept my karma good and I didn't. So the West takes these and they simplify it to the fact that karma is a report card instead of being karma is how well you fulfill whatever role you were born into. All right, so that brings us to the end of these words. There's a lot of them. Go back, look them over. We'll be looking more in depth at these in future lessons, but that is it for today.